Bernita James from HUD, and we're all here for the Energy is Everywhere webinar, and the theme today is Successful Family Engagement. We are scheduled to start at 3, so we're going to give everyone a few more minutes to get started. So in a few more minutes, we'll be getting started. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bernita from HUD, and we want to thank everyone for joining us. We're about to get started. Today's presentation is going to be on successful family engagement, and it's part of our Energy is Everywhere series. Today we have representatives from Pittsburgh's Carnegie Science Center and also from Albuquerque's Explora Science Center. They are both members of the Association of Science and Technology Centers, and these are great resources for housing authorities, and we thought that they would have some very interesting things to share with you and best practices to offer in terms of family engagement. As we both know, science centers have connections to science, technology, engineering, and math, and we're hoping that the resources that they provide you with can give you additional resources to share with your residents and encourage them to move into fields associated with STEM professions. The theme today is early childhood education. It's never too early to begin exposing children to science, technology, and math. And the presenters that we have today will go over some of their best practices on how they've been able to engage the entire family when it comes to early childhood education and STEM interests. Our first presenter is Wendy Brenneman, and she's coming to us from the Carnegie Science Center. Wendy?
Thanks, Bernita. So I just want to first of all say thanks to HUD and to Bernita for hosting and for controlling the slideshow for us today. Very much appreciated. And thank you to everybody attending for being here as well. I'm going to be taking questions all the way at the end of the presentation today. So if you have any questions for me, you can make a note and ask them at the end, and I'd be happy to answer any of those. My contact information will also be on the very last slide. so you can feel free to follow up with me by email or by phone. You can also, if you see my name on the right side of your screen there, if you right-click on that, you can copy my email to your clipboard and just paste it wherever you want it. So feel free to get a hold of me with any questions you might have after today. Go ahead to the next slide, please.
Looks like it's a bit delayed. All right, there we go.
Ah, great. So I wanted to first of all talk a little bit about the Carnegie Science Center for anybody who is listening is not familiar. So we are located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we are the largest provider of STEM resources here in southwestern PA for all children, pre-K through 12th grade, and for adults as well, of course. We delight, educate, and inspire through interactive experiences in science and technology, and we really strive to help everybody who comes through our doors to believe that science is fun and accessible and that everybody can do it. Of course, we recognize that not everybody in the region can make it to Pittsburgh for a field trip. There are always transportation barriers. So we also have a traveling outreach arm called Science on the Road. We travel all across the region to Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, and beyond. We reach about 200,000 kids per year, pre-K through 8th grade, throughout the region. And we do hands-on programming as well as larger stage-type shows to get everybody very excited about science. Go ahead to the next slide, please, Bernita. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of everything that I'm going to be talking about today. Within our outreach department, Science on the Road, which is where I work, is our early childhood STEM outreach model. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that model. I'll explain briefly how it works. I'd like to tell you how we got to where we are today with the model, what we've learned, and how we know what we know. And I'll also share with you our participants in the model and how our relationship sort of got started and how we work together in case you're interested in forming a partnership like this with any of your local cultural organizations. We are very lucky to have an independent evaluator with our project. So I'd like to share with you a little bit of our evaluation and feedback from families just to let you know how it's working. And I'm also going to share what exactly it is that we do with the families, how we support them, and what we do that is so effective with the families. I'll also give you some ideas to implement activities like these yourself if you're interested, and share some best practices for doing these types of activities with families and engaging them in STEM. Both best practices that we have learned throughout the way, and some that are available online for you to go and look up on your own time. And then finally, I'll share some additional online resources for where to find examples of the activities that I'm talking about today. And we can go ahead to the next slide, please. So this is a very simplified version of our early childhood STEM outreach model. Of course, we know that science is very appropriate for young children, as Bernita was saying earlier. It's a process that they engage in naturally because it comes from curiosity and exploration and asking questions, which is something that young children do very frequently. Unfortunately, even though science is important at this age, we know it's an indicator for later success in science, but many teachers and parents are not comfortable with science. They didn't like it in school, or they don't feel confident with it, they don't feel knowledgeable about it, so they're very hesitant to help their children engage in science experiments. So, you know, it's no longer, one of the important messages of our program is that science is no longer considered to be memorizing facts from a textbook. It's about doing and learning together. Another message is that teachers and families are already doing science, they're just not thinking of it as science. So we're really trying to show the adults in the lives of young children that science is all around them. So to accomplish that, we are working with classrooms and educators and families to support the science that they are doing. In the classroom, we do some modeling of activities as well as providing resources for the teachers to use. We never want to send the message that you need stuff to do science, but we do recognize that it's much easier to do science when you have a magnifier for everybody instead of just having, 2 in your classroom. So we make sure that the classrooms are well resourced. We also provide educator professional development and modeling, meaning that we will go to the classroom and do developmentally appropriate science activities with their students so they can see, what that looks like and give them ideas for what they can be doing. And of course, family support is what we're going to be talking about the most today. So I'll just talk about it briefly now. It does consist of family events as well as classroom send home resources. As Bernita said, families are the first and most important teacher that a child can have, so we want to make sure that we are taking advantage of their time together and giving them ways to engage in science together with the whole family. So we can go to the next slide, please. So here I'd like to tell you a little bit about the participants in the project and how those relationships were formed. So we have been administrating this project since 2007, which is when we got started. About 150 Head Start classrooms have been a part of this project since then. Because of these participating classrooms, we know that all of the activities that we use have been classroom tested. We've gotten feedback on them, and we have improved them as we went. So included in these 150 classrooms are, of course, the students and their teachers, the paraprofessionals in those classrooms, the families of those students, and the administration of the school. So a subset of about 20 of these 150 teachers have also come together to form what we have called the Science Development Team. So this is a group of teachers who felt comfortable with science and felt that they can mentor their colleagues by sharing the activities that they were doing in their classroom. So one of the resources that you can find online, and you'll see the link at the bottom of the slide there, is some videos that were made by these teachers as well as families in their classrooms. And these videos show them doing science together. It gives some really good opportunities for questions that families can ask their students and teachers can ask students. And it also provides ways that families are able to talk about science together. So you can check those out. You can share those with your families if you like. And I see we're at the next slide. Thank you, Bernita. So I'd also like to tell you a little bit about the evaluation of our project, because we know that anecdotally we were, of course, reaching our families, and they were having fun, and they were having a wonderful time, and they were doing more science. But we needed to know that we were actually making a difference. And for that, it's very helpful to have actual statistics and actual numbers. Especially for us, we worked with audiences that are rural, that are suburban, and that are urban. And we wanted to make sure that there was equality in our project and that we were reaching each group, not just reaching them, but reaching them effectively. So this is just a very small portion of many of the reports and data sets that we have from our evaluator, but I think it shows 2 of the most important outcomes for us. One, that families are doing science more often, and 2, that they're feeling more supported in the science that they're doing. So the reason I'm showing you this is so that you can see that the practices that we have are actually effective. So in the first graph, you'll see the green bars are the comparison families in our project. So these are families in the same communities we were working in, but they did not receive the intervention that we were providing. And we found that about 18% of these families are doing science at home weekly, while the families that we were working with were actually doing science. 50% of them were doing science weekly or more. And we found that that was, according to our evaluators, that was statistically relevant and statistically significant, that difference between 18% and 15%. We also found, if you look at the second graph, that in the 3rd year of our project, 66% of families that we were working with reported receiving science support. So they were receiving resources from their classroom and from the Science Center as well, while only 38% of the comparison families were. So in other words, families that we were not working with weren't really receiving as many resources from their classroom and from their community organizations as the ones that we were working with, in which family support was a focus. So that was very positive for us to see that because of the work that we had done, they were feeling more supportive and feeling better resourced to do science at home, which is what we really want. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to show you one little piece of feedback from the families. And I'll also just pause to say here that if you are planning a family engagement project, having evaluation is something that I would really encourage you to do, and having collecting feedback if you're not already doing it. It can be something as simple as a survey that you send out, which is one of the things that we did. You can have a focus group, whatever you feel like your audience is best going to respond to. It is important, I think, that you know what your families need and what they're looking for and what they want out of the project and what the impact has been. So it is something that I definitely encourage every family engagement project to have as part of their intervention. So this piece of feedback, I think, really sums up a lot of our work, that we are giving families the chance to see their children doing science, to believe that their children are interested in doing science, because we can tell them that science is very important for early childhood students, but I think until they're able to actually see it and engage with their students in science, it's difficult to believe it, like any of us. So this, encourages them to go the extra mile a little bit to do the science with them. And I also want to pause to say here that at the end of the presentation, there will be a link where you can find many of the resources that we use in our project online. So one of the things that I will be uploading after the webinar is a sample of the survey that we used. So if you'd like to take that and adapt it for use in your programs to collect feedback from your families, you are free to do that. Okay, we can have the next slide, please. All right, so we're going to get a little bit into the actual activities that we provided to the families who were participating in our project. We did have two main types of family supports. One were the hands-on family events that families actually came to and attended with their students. And the second was the send home resources, which I'm going to be talking about next. So first, I'll say a little bit about our family events. So in the picture here, you're seeing, in the slide I should say, you're seeing three pictures from one of our family events titled Hello Robo. And this event is an introduction to robotics for young students. So in the picture on the top right there, you're seeing the young man controlling a robot arm, and he's moving that around with a family member. On the bottom left, you can see a family picking robot parts out of a tray of slime, which they will then sort by shape. And this is a correlation to robots who work in factories, who have jobs sorting things by shape or by color, and also doing a job that humans would not want to do because it's dirty and it's dull. So robots can do that for us. This is also a demonstration of the fact that robots do not have skin and nerves like we do. They have end effectors. So it's sort of taking away the sense of touch a little bit to give us an idea of what it, what it might be like to be a robot. And then on the bottom right, I love this picture. The young man is programming a car robot called a Probot to actually draw a picture on the piece of paper that's in front of him. We'll put a marker through the middle of the Probot, and he can program it to make a square or make a, a triangle or a set of steps, and it's a very fun activity. So all of our family events are, first of all, hands-on. That's one of the most important things about them, because we want families who come to actually be able to engage in science cooperatively. So we never want, families to kind of take a step back and just watch as their children are doing the science. We really want them to do it together. They're not a large commitment of time. One thing that we know about early childhood families is that they don't have a lot of time. So our events are 2 hours long, but families can drop in the middle of that. They don't have to be there for the entire 2 hours. They can kind of come and go. depending on the amount of time that they have and the level of interest of their students. We usually do find that even though we don't ask families to rotate, we don't time them, we don't give them, for example, 5 minutes at each station. They walk on their own time from table to table as their interest dictates. But we do find that families want to visit every table and students want to visit every table, so they do take advantage of everything that's there for them. The events, we usually include 8 activity stations, which for us we found to be a good number. It's not too few, it's not too many. They can get through each of the stations in 45 minutes to an hour, but they're not overwhelmed by it. So 8 for us is a good number. Each of the stations is actually facilitated by a volunteer. So rather than just walking up and reading a sign or reading a piece of paper that tells them what to do, the volunteer is really there to engage the families in the science. So as they come up, they might ask them a question or ask them, what they see on the table and how they think they could use it. And that open-ended questioning is something that's very important for science exploration for young children. We're not there to instruct them on how to do what they're doing. We're there to guide them through their own exploration. And we've also found that this really takes a lot of pressure off of your volunteers, because we tell them up front, we do not expect you to be encyclopedias of scientific knowledge. We don't expect you to know everything about a robot and how it works, but we do expect you to engage with the families and talk to the students and explore with them and help them through this activity. Another really nice thing about the family nights is that it gives teachers and families and students a way to interact with each other that's really pressure-free, especially because early childhood classrooms at drop-off and at pickup, where they usually interact, can be very stressful and very rushed. So we want to give them a stress-free way to interact with each other and really relationship build a little bit. Okay, so we can go to the next slide, please. All right. Oops. There we go. So I also want to talk a little bit about our send home classroom resources. We feel that these resources are important because they create a link between what is happening in the early childhood classroom and what is happening at home. And it gives both teachers and parents a way to talk about what's happening in the classroom and talk about what's happening at home and put those things together. So these resources are owned by the classrooms. On the left, you will see a picture of one of our send home backpacks. So in these backpacks, there are typically 3 different books. And in each one of the books, you will find 2 stickers. And you can see an example of the sticker right there to the right. It says Night Worker at the top. So one of the stickers says talk about it. And this card offers ways for families to talk about the book that they have just read, rather than just reading it and kind of putting it aside. This is a way to really create conversations about what they have seen. So it offers open-ended questions. For example, one on the card there says, what do you think the construction machines in the picture can do? So this is a way to engage families with their children in interesting scientific explorations. There are also resources in the backpack that go along with suggested activities connected to the book. So on the second sticker, it says try it. And on this sticker will be examples of ways to explore activities with themes that connect directly to the book. So for example, in this book, it's called The Night Worker. A young child and his father visit a construction site where the father works at night, and they take a flashlight with them. So we include in the backpack a flashlight for families to then explore and do various activities with, all about light and shadow. We did think that it was important for families to be able to have these backpacks for at least a week so that they can get a chance to read all of the books and try all of the activities. We do like to send home surveys in the backpack because it gives a really nice opportunity for families to provide some feedback. And you can also provide a blank piece of paper so that children and their families can draw, what their favorite activity was, and then the family member can dictate at the bottom what the child says about it. That's a great opportunity for extending what goes on at home back to the classroom. And I'll also say, if you're thinking of creating your own backpacks, of course, we know that accessibility is very important. So really think thoughtfully about the types of books that you want to include in the backpack. We did choose a variety. So some of them have sort of robust stories with great vocabulary in them. Some of them have really great pictures but fewer words, so that families and students can have more conversation about what's happening in the book or make up their own stories. And we also chose some books that had no words at all. And this is for non-reading families or English language learners who can then sort of narrate it for themselves. You might also notice our backpacks actually avoid using the word science. They're called Explore Together backpacks. And I will say, of course, I love the word science, but for families, it can mean something a little bit different. It can be intimidating, or it can be just a word that creates a barrier for them. So we avoided using it. Instead, we just said explore and try it, and other words that are very related to science but don't actually use the word science. We want everybody to be able to explore together. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So these are some wonderful online resources that you can go and check out on your own time. I'm not going to talk too much about them. I will say that the NSTA, which is the National Science Teachers Association, has some wonderful position statements. If you are thinking about ways to engage your families more, if you're thinking about ways to do more science with your families or with your young children, I would definitely go and check these out. They have some declarations for things that you can do or things that you should be doing. So the first one there is a position statement on early childhood science education. And this one actually has endorsement from NAEYC, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. So it's very developmentally appropriate and offers some wonderful links as well to online research. The next position statement is on learning science in informal environments, which, any learning that takes place outside of the classroom is an informal environment. So that's a museum, that's an after-school program, any of those types of places. And then the third is on parent involvement in science learning. So if you're wondering, what's appropriate for your families, or what sort of support do they need to do science together, this position statement is a great place to start. And then the last link that you'll see there is our Google site, where I will be uploading several sample materials that I have told you about today. So I'll be uploading, like I said earlier, the survey. I'll also be giving some examples of the types of activities that we do at our family nights, if you're wondering what those look like. A suggested timeline, if you'd like to hold your own family night and you're wondering, how to sort of get all of that organized. And the stickers from the books in the backpack. I'll be uploading a couple of those as well. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So here's one more online resource for you. This is part of our website. It's called STEMosphere. So that's stemisphere.carnegiesciencecenter.org. And STEMosphere is a place for you to check out if you're just looking for more activities to send home to your families, if you're looking for things to try with your students in an informal environment where you're having them come to you. There are regional activities surrounding southwestern Pennsylvania, but there are also links to websites that are available nationally, so everybody will be able to access that. And you can also there read our study of the role of STEM education in the area called Work to Do. So that's also a wonderful resource as you're moving forward with your STEM programming. Okay, we can go to the next slide. All right, that's it for me. So thank you so much for your attention. As you can see, all of my contact information is there. I just wanted to say that I'm very happy to be a resource for you if you are looking to start a program like this, start a partnership like this. I'd be happy to talk to you about what's worked for us and what I wish I knew when I was getting started. I also just want to mention, Bernita earlier said that was mentioning Aztec, the Association of Science and Technology Centers. Their website is astc.org. If you want to start a partnership like this with your science center and you'd like to find out what science centers are near you, if you're not already aware of them, you can check out aztec.org. There's a link right on the top right that says Find a Science Center, and you can find out what's near you, searching by state, by your area, and find them. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Wendy. And our next presenter is Tara Henderson, and she's coming to us from Explora Science Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tara?
Yes, thank you, Bernita, for including me, and thank you, Wendy, for all of that great information and sharing all of the great details. And I want to echo Wendy on checking out the stuff by NSTA and NAYC in relation to early childhood education. They're great position statements, and I highly recommend it. I am at Explora in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you'll see on the slide a picture of our building with our beautiful Sandia Mountains behind it. Our mission at Explora is creating opportunities for inspirational discovery and the joy of lifelong learning through interactive experiences in science, technology, and art. What we really strive to have something for the one-year-olds all the way up through the senior citizens that are engaging the whole family, engaging the children by themselves, engaging the adults by themselves, but really it becomes an environment where everyone's engaged together. We do a lot of different things. We are located in New Mexico, which is a fairly rural state. There's not a whole lot of other science centers in New Mexico. There are some smaller ones. So we not only have our building, but we travel throughout the entire state and take all of our education programs on the road. And this may mean driving 5 or 6 hours one way to bring an education program to a rural community, because it's just a lot easier than trying to load a lot of the students and families into a bus and bus them to Albuquerque. It's easier for Explora to go to that community. So next slide, please. The program that I'm going to sort of focus on for this webinar is our Growing a Scientist program. And basically, it's fall in love with science and with your child. It's a semester or series-based program for preschoolers. And it's about 2.5-year-olds to 5-year-olds. It's kids who have not yet gone to kindergarten. And they come and attend with an adult. This could be a parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be an aunt, an uncle. Occasionally we have had like a nanny or an au pair attend with them, or it could be a godparent, but they are coming with some adult who's an important part of their life. And in this program, we are expecting that adult to be actively engaged, and we are modeling and encouraging that. We're encouraging them to make discoveries about science by questioning experience and investigating. They are developing their own knowledge. And we have a couple experienced early childhood educators on staff, and this is what they do, is they develop this curriculum, they engage these families, and they are including literature and art as part of this. Next slide, please. So just a picture from one of our programs, a couple moms here working with their sons. In this class, they are investigating mysterious matter. These boys are probably around 2.5, 3 years of age. They are learning how to use pipettes. Get parents who will say, oh, or teachers, that their 2nd grade or 9-year-old child is way too young, they can't master a pipette. And I know from experience that you can give them to a preschooler, you can give them to an older toddler, and they work on that fine motor skill and they learn to master it. So these guys are mixing liquids together to see what happens, and as you can see, one of those boys is quite excited to see how one of the liquids is mixing or not mixing with the others. And the parents are both very actively engaged with it. Next slide, please. So Growing a Scientist occurs not only at the Explora Museum, but also out in the community. We've got sort of three big ways that this occurs. One is individual registration as part of Explora's family programs. So these are ones that families can register for on an individual basis, and they come every other week for a semester. So there's a fall semester and a spring semester. We have about 45, 47 different classes that we rotate through. So a family could come with their child starting at 2.5 years of age and not really repeat a class until that child is ready to go to kindergarten. And that prolonged engagement is really one of the key things in building the capacity of the parents and the children to explore science together. These are fee-based programs. However, we do have scholarship opportunities available, and we really work with the community to find out where they are and what they can afford to pay. We do want people to pay a little bit of something. We found if it's completely free, people tend to sign up and then they don't show up, whereas if they have to have a little bit of buy-in, they're more likely to show up. So we do have scholarships available for families who want to attend and not able to do it. With the on-site programs, we offer them both weekday and weekend, and we have times both in the morning and in the afternoon to sort of accommodate different family schedules. The last 5 years or so, we've been in partnership with Even Start centers, and these are similar to Head Start in a lot of ways. Their focus is more on literacy, though, and we have been going in once a week or about once a month. It depends on the teacher, sometimes 3 times during the school year, sometimes 8 times during the school year, and it's part of their parent education class. So parents are required to attend an education class, I think, every single week as part of their child being enrolled in the Even Start program. One of those classes happens to be when Explora goes into the classroom and we explore some science topic. We work with the teachers to choose the appropriate topic, and we usually try to coincide it with what the teacher is doing in her classroom. So one teacher, if she is looking at animals, they're going to go to the zoo. We might come in and we do a class on animal camouflage and really delve a lot deeper into that. Or in the fall, we have a big event here in Albuquerque, which is our balloon fiesta, and everyone sees these hundreds of hot air balloons up in the air. You know it's there. Teachers tend to use that time to do activities and themes on air, so we might go in and do a class where we investigate the different properties of air, using air to do work, the idea that air takes up space. You can't really see it, but it's there, and so trying to provide those visuals for parents. And we also have been doing them at a couple local early childhood centers that serve low-income and at-risk families with preschool-age children. One of those child care centers works with families experiencing homelessness, which there's a lot of different things going on with those families, a lot of outside constraints, and it's a very needed diversion for some of them, that they can spend time with their child doing something that's sort of more on the fun end of the spectrum, but they're also learning a lot of skills. One of the other centers works primarily with low-income families, but most of these parents do have jobs and homes, but they are still low-income. Next slide, please. So another picture from the program. This is one of our Saturday classes. We tend to have a lot more dads that attend on the weekend than during the weekday. It just happens to be like that. And these guys are exploring the whole idea of an inclined plane and what it takes to move a car up the inclined plane, how many marbles does it take. And so really getting into things like math skills and counting, and you're using fine motor skills of putting the marbles into the cups, working with the parents to ask questions in a way that's not just quizzing their kids to have that one right answer. The father, who is front and center, this picture was taken a couple years ago, has gone through the program with a couple different children, and now that his children are aging out of the program, he's a little bit concerned because he's going to have to find something to do with himself because he's enjoyed it so much. So that's just one of the neat stories that we hear, that the parents end up enjoying it more than the kids. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, repeat exposure and experience is the key to building comfort and expertise of the students and their parents in exploring science. So going multiple times. It's not just a one-time visit. It's really 3 times. It's 4 times. It's 8 times. It's 9 times. In some cases, it could even be a couple years. Building that relationship with them, building that comfort that this is science, this is math. It's okay to explore. You can do this stuff here. So the dad and son in this picture are doing an activity with measuring, and they are using the boy's shoe to measure how tall he is. I think also during the course of this program they use their hands to measure how tall they are. They use dad's feet, so using a lot of non-standard everyday tools to start getting into that idea of measurement and numeracy. Next picture, please. Slide. So I wanted to include some of the quotes from teachers. We haven't done a lot of systematic evaluation here at Explora. It is something that we are moving into. We've been focused a lot more on the anecdotal evidence, teachers telling us things, families telling us things. And we're slowly starting to collect more data to support these quotes. But one of the teachers we've been working with several years, Beth, told us that Explora taught, one family commented to her that Explora taught their son science concepts in a way that he and they as parents could understand. And it was engaging for both the students and the parents learned to ask questions to their preschooler to extend and promote their learning. And she was seeing this beyond the class that we were there. She was seeing this throughout her other engagement with these families. But it's not only impacting the children. We found we were also impacting the teachers. And as one teacher commented, it's good for the teachers because it helps them to be more creative in their classrooms. And it gives the parents ideas on how to interact and develop activities with their children at home. So we're modeling for the parents how to engage with their kids. We're modeling for the teachers. And a lot of teachers will come back and tell me, I took some of that activity that you did in class this week and I have now implemented it, or I've changed something around in my classroom to allow for that more open-ended exploration, to allow for the children to continue investigating, to encourage more families or to share with families that may not have attended that week. Next slide, please. So then it's also a learning experience for the parents as well as the teachers. This top one, I think, has to be one of my favorite ones. You really think you're working with these preschool kids, but you're impacting more than that. Families that are saying that the science class topics taught to their preschool children were helping them as they were going to do their GED or high school equivalency classes and their exams. It was making those ideas actually relevant to them. They were able to visualize what they were being taught and then relate it back. So that was really cool. And then this other one, Gail, this grandma who said she'll have to send the other grandma out of town more often. She thinks she learned more than he did, meaning her grandson. And she's been coming for Growing a Scientist for about 12 years with one grandkid or another. At this point, she could probably take over and teach the program. She really enjoys it, and she has become a great model to other parents and grandparents who have been attending. Next slide, please. And then they find out that science is not boring after all. Like, you Google what is a scientist, and all of a sudden you get pictures of Anglo white males in lab coats. Oftentimes they're bald, or they have crazy hair. They're in a chemistry lab holding flasks and beakers. They've got glasses on, and that's what people think is science. It's those scary math equations that you all of a sudden have to have. But in reality, science is part of everyday life. Some quotes from some feedback surveys, and you can read them. is the idea that you don't need that lab. You don't need that Bunsen burner to learn about science. Or the parents who say they've now discovered science is everywhere and everything. As a child, they thought it was a school subject, which was limited. Or it's not a boring subject. It is really fun and interesting. So it's really fun to see for me as an individual and a facilitator in these programs that parents go from the idea of it's science, I can't touch it, I can't do it, to being, hey, this is really cool, this is really interesting. They are going on after the program. They are looking up other ideas. They are coming back with things they have discovered. They're reporting back on their findings in much the same manner that their preschool age child is doing. Next slide, please. But one thing is really building that relationship between the Explora educators and the families. So at one of the early childhood centers where one of my couple of the educators, Tony and Tom, go once a month, one of the teachers commented that they have been able to transform complex science concepts into hands-on experiences that everyone seemed to enjoy together. And in this center, it's been targeted at the preschool kids, but they'll have as young as toddlers, babies coming with, here's the school-age kids, so it has really become a family venue to meet once a month for these classes. Or the parents who comment that through working with Miss Tony, she's learned how to become a better parent, she's learned how to ask questions, she's learned how to be more calm with her children. Next slide, please. So when we go into a center or we have families come to us at Explora, it's about an hour-and-a-half facilitated program, but that learning extends well beyond that. At one of the centers where we did some activities with magnets, the students took it upon themselves to experiment with magnets in the classroom for a full 3 weeks after the project. They were really engaged. They kept revisiting it. They kept trying to find out what things were magnetic. They were replicating the experiments with things they found in their classroom, which then is contagious. The other kids who haven't been a part of it become a part of it and get the experience as well. Or the mom who commented that it helped her discover learning at home. She learned how to ask open-ended questions, and it became more of a mom-son activity to do at home. So it wasn't just that hour-and-a-half program. This is part of our Growing a Scientist programs. We also include memberships to Explora, so these families can come to Explora at no cost to them, give them a different venue. And this particular center that works with families experiencing homelessness, that membership was a lifesaver. The dad was able to bring his kids to Explora during the summer months, during the weekends. When he had to be out of the shelter, it gave them someplace safe to go. And so it's really extending beyond that one particular program. It's impacting more families. It's engaging families, giving them places to go and engage together. I'm happy to talk with more people about more information if you want more specifics on any of these programs, where we get our resources from. I think my contact information is up as well as Wendy's, and we're happy to do that. We're also happy to answer any questions that anyone will have.
Thank you very much, Tara, and thank you, Wendy, also. We do have one question. Right now, everyone's line is muted, but you have the ability to raise your hand. So if you do that, I can unmute you so you can ask either Tara or Wendy your question. So the first question came from Anne Hernandez. Her question: was there research or surveys done that motivated your decision to not use the word science in the packs, or was this based on your experience with your community? So Wendy, I believe that's a question for you.
Yes, thank you for your question. There was no research specifically that told us that science was a word that we should avoid, at least when it comes to the backpacks. This was largely based on our own experience, although we did also have some evaluation data that I didn't show that showed us that science is the area of lowest confidence and lowest feeling of support for members of the community. So we already knew that there were some sort of slightly negative connotations to the word. One of the goals, of course, of the project was to change that and to make sure that families knew that science wasn't scary or difficult, but that it was exciting and that it was accessible. We also knew that families who were taking the backpacks home would not necessarily be coming to our family events that we were holding. We, of course, hoped that they did, but we didn't know for sure. So we knew these backpacks would be going to families who had not had the interaction with us and the positive interaction with the volunteers. So they were sort of coming in without any of that previous positive reinforcement around the word science. And we just didn't want to, turn them off to this opportunity of taking the backpacks home and engaging together as a family. So we really just wanted to include as many people as possible and then bring the word science back in later when they had already had these positive experiences together.
Thank you very much for answering that question. While you were speaking, I also launched a poll question, and so it was, does your housing authority already partner with your local museum or science center? So about 25% said yes and 75% said no. So hopefully after this webinar, that's something that changes and you're able to reach out to your local science center and see about engaging your families in activities for early childhood education and beyond. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box, or you could also raise your hand. We have another poll question, so that'll be up for about 2 minutes. You can. You're an attendee. And if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or type it into the chat box. Okay, so we're going to close the poll for this question. So it was, would your housing authority be interested in implementing similar programs? And 100% that answered said yes. We have one last question, and we're also going to give everyone a few more minutes to ask any questions. We have a second one. Will this slideshow be available to download? Yes, it will be. We have a website for the Energy is Everywhere webinar series, and we've been posting all of our webinars on that website. And we've also recorded this session, so it will be possible for you to go back and review this webinar presentation. We have about 4 more minutes left in the presentation, so if there's anyone interested in asking any questions, this would be the time to do it. Okay, and for our last question, we were interested to know if people were attending the webinar by themselves or with other coworkers, and it looks like it's about half and half. About 57% said it's just themselves, and 43 said they're attending with others. So if no one has any other questions, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to be here. I hope that the session was informative. And as you can see, all of our emails are on the slide. You can email us at energyliteracy@ee.doe.gov if you have any questions about the Energy is Everywhere webinar series. And you could also contact either Wendy or Tara for additional information. So I'd like to thank everyone and thank our presenters especially for being here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bernita.